Well, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Business Insights 21.3. It's our Gloucestershire-based online event that sits with the Gloucestershire Business Show. And welcome also to the very first live stream that we're doing for the event. We've got some great live streams lined up over the next couple of days, and this is going to be absolutely no exception. We're looking at the visitor economy and the international opportunities that presents. So as we go into it, I'm just going to introduce our chair for a second, and we'll hear a little bit about what's going to come in the next hour or so. So, Steve Gardner-Collins, just introduce yourself for a second. You're the chair today.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Steve Gardner-Collins. I'm sales director of the Hatton Collection, and I'm also director of Visit Gloucestershire.
Brilliant. So you're right in the thick, sales director of a hotel chain, you're right in the thick of that visitor economy and hospitality opening up. It's just happening. The very first moments were a week or so ago, and then you'll be looking forward to the 21st of June. So just give us a little bit of an overview. Where are you at in the process now?
We were 10 minutes before opening really quiet and have been since Boxing Day, to a full lunch, full dinner service. It went from 0 to 100 miles an hour in 10 minutes.
Wow. Which
is great for our business, great for the sector. I'm hoping that all my colleagues are feeling exactly the same kind of reopening momentum that we've managed to capture really quick.
And has that caused a good buzz?
It's buzzy, it's slightly anxious, it's indoor dining, it's thrown us. Since the 12th of April for some of our pubs, it's been all outdoors and it felt more safe. You all come into play and it's slightly different dynamics, different atmosphere, but actually visitors are taking it in their stride. They're desperate to come out with their friends and family, and we have an opportunity to dine indoors. So that's exactly what everybody's doing.
Well, that's really great, and I hope it stays that way looking forward.
Thanks.
Now, just before we hand over to you for the panel, obviously this particular session is about the opportunities that the international side of it presents. And I'd also like to especially introduce Roger McCrill here. Roger worked with us across the piece with Business Insights and the show. He's looking after and overseeing the international trade content. We run 2 international events a year, and one's next month. And gosh, that means Roger's just involved in everything, as he well knows. But Roger, just very quickly, before we get the proper discussion going, we all think about the visitor economy and the hospitality sector opening up for the market space around us and in the UK, but there is a really important opportunity on the international side as well, isn't there?
Oh, I think there is. I think that at the moment, though, it's so uncertain, of course, because of the situation, particularly in the countries we deal with as a company, India, China and the US. There's still lots of uncertainty. But the opportunity for Gloucestershire with the international trade, to me, is considerable.
Great. And you look after India and China from your own business's perspective?
Yeah, we're a company called Sabre UK Limited. We work with companies both in the UK and in China, India and the US, encouraging them to trade in either direction. Great. And Gloucestershire is, I live in Gloucestershire, so I'm keen to try and see Gloucestershire benefit from that.
And that's what it's all about today. So without further ado, I'm not going to get in the way any longer. Steve, over to you.
Thanks, Pete. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our discussion around visitor economy and our international opportunities. We're here to talk about Gloucestershire, and we're obviously going to take consideration the fact that the sector's just reopened. It was an incredible 2020, a very troubled year indeed, and we're already in May, which is halfway through almost 2021, and businesses in our sector are just reopening this week. So we're here to talk today about international opportunities and what we can take advantage of looking forward in terms of the year ahead and into 2022. Roger's already introduced himself, so if I introduce the rest of the panel, over to Lindsay. Introduce yourself.
Good afternoon, my name's Lindsay. I own Cleve Hill Hotel and I'm also part of TURF Cheltenham. We're a collaborative of just over 45 independent owned hospitality venues within Cheltenham itself.
Great, thanks. And Claire?
I'm Claire Thayers, and my day job is working for a company called Happily, which is passionate about provenance and food and drink, which is obviously a big offer living in Gloucestershire. We've got wonderful countryside, we've got wonderful produce. And also I've got a lot of experience of working with Visit Cornwall and was part of the South West Regional Growth Fund. So I actually was lucky enough to go out to Europe and actually promote the region. So we're going to have a really interesting discussion. So I'm looking forward to it.
Thanks. Rebecca.
Hi, I'm Rebecca. I look after the tourism and destination marketing team for Gloucester City Council, otherwise known as Visit Gloucester.
Great, thanks everybody, and obviously, of course, Roger as well joining us today. So, over the last 12 months, in theory, the sector's been open and closed, and for the third time round, we're reopening again. And there are some limitations this year on being able to go abroad, and therefore, with the kind of red, amber, and green hitting us all hard, UK staycation is definitely perhaps Gloucestershire's opportunity first and foremost, certainly this summer. So, as we plan to go through kind of a recovery period and a regrowth, the first kind of question is, what's Gloucestershire's opportunity for the UK staycation market, and what do the panel think in terms of Gloucestershire and visitors coming from all around the UK? Lindsay, you're a hotelier like me. What do you think about UK staycations for 2021?
I think we've got everything, to be perfectly honest. It's such a wonderful place to be able to actually talk to people. And when you're talking about, when somebody says to you, well, what's there to do? It's never ending. There's so much. And whilst I appreciate you might need to pack a little bit extra for the British weather, as we're experiencing in May at the moment, the world's your oyster. You can do sports, you can walk, you can shop, you can eat. I mean, even just in Cheltenham itself, there's a lot to do, let alone if you want to just be able to nip within an hour, you can be in a main city, or in another direction, you can be out in the middle of the countryside. It's phenomenal.
And at the moment, in terms of you're in your first week of reopening, like us, what's your kind of week looking like, your month in terms of those guests? Are they here for a staycation, or are they here on a slightly shorter break? What are you experiencing at the moment?
I've got a lovely blend, actually. People that are walking the Cotswold Way, so they're just staying for one night. Those that are reuniting with friends and family, which is always lovely because the anticipation, the excitement is just there. Grandparents, we've got birthday celebrations, anniversaries. An absolute blend of everybody, and it creates a really wonderfully happy environment because everybody's just so excited to be out and doing things.
Do you think people are coming to stay with you to experience the kind of wider area, or are they staying quite local to where you're based over in Cheltenham?
I think, to be honest, the majority of people staying with me are staying with me for a purpose. The only thing that bucks that is half term. Half term is very much for the friends and families getting together for an actual week of doing things, so entertaining the children or just being able to actually take a few more days to spend with people. But half term bucks the trend. But apart from that, majority of people are here on a purpose.
And actually, we've split the panel quite nicely because you've got hoteliers at one end, and we're certainly experiencing the same pattern. We've got visitors at the moment who are short stay midweek, en route to Devon and Cornwall and back, and are experiencing quite a localised visit midweek. And then the weekends are a bit more holidaying, getting down to the Keys and going off and experiencing, as Lindsay said, the Cotswold Way and walking. What's interesting about the other end of our panel, with international in the middle, is that we've got some destinational kind of roles. So Claire, what's your perspective on UK staycation this year?
I think staycations have become more and more popular, and I think post-COVID, this is the opportunity. I think for any hotel really needs to capitalise on this, because more and more people are terrified about being stuck abroad or whatever. So I think the staycation opportunity for us is huge. So my message out there is use this and turn it to your advantage, and encourage as many people to take the staycation mentality and do that. So we are lucky in Gloucestershire, and this is why I'm so excited about Visit Gloucestershire, because we're actually managing Gloucestershire as a brand, and we're able to promote all the wonderful things that we've got here. We've got sport, we've got the walks, but also we've got quirky different places to visit. Tewkesbury's experience is very, very different to one of the Honeystone cottages that you see in the Cotswolds. So it's all local. And certainly when I was abroad working on the South West Regional Growth Fund, to promote Gloucestershire is easy because it's central. So I know that has a disadvantage for you as hoteliers, Lindsay and Steve, because people will use it as a somewhere to stop on the way to somewhere else. But we can still use that to our advantage, because hopefully once they've sampled it, they'll want to come back for more.
Yeah, definitely. I think that sampling is our opportunity, perhaps with the 21 staycation market, and selling and pitching what the wider area's got to offer. I know that places like Gloucester Services with their leaflet racks, it is one of the most popular leaflet racks in the county, and people will stop en route there and back and they'll be picking up all the nice things that we've got to offer, not necessarily experiencing them today or this week, but we're hoping that they'll want to come back and experience it later on in the year or in the future. Rebecca, you've got destination, you've got Gloucester. What's your perspective on UK staycation for Gloucester this year?
We see it as a real opportunity this year. We are hoping to kind of capitalise on the emerging niches of traveller trends in the UK. So, there's been a lot of kind of talk about the honeypots and them being overwhelmed. And actually, people might be looking for somewhere that they wouldn't normally go to. And that's where Gloucester, really comes into its own. It's a real authentic city where you can experience, an amazing, vibrant, multicultural destination that just has so much, so many different areas to explore. If you go into Quedgley, where your hotel, the Thatch, is based, it feels very, very different to the centre of town, which is very urban and quirky. So we're kind of really looking into trying to market ourselves to domestic solo travellers, because they are one of the emerging niches that are more likely to visit somewhere. They're a bit more adventurous. So your Gen Zs are one of our key markets as well, because they are more likely to visit somewhere that they wouldn't normally go to. So positioning ourselves to those kind of key emerging traveller niches is what we're concentrating on, and making sure that we're, pitching the right element of the city on the right channel with the right messaging to those audiences.
Thanks. And I suppose also that leads quite nicely into that thought around itinerary. When you're a solo traveller in particular and experiencing a hotel that's more city-based, and then having guests that are staying on the outside of the city, there are experiences that are really diverse. Do you think in terms of Gloucester's offering, it's got enough for kind of like the unique experiences that the Instagrammers in particularly like? They want to be the first one to take a photograph outside of a pink door in the Cotswolds on a what's Gloucester's kind of edge to give it that Insta social feed? So
obviously the docks are stunning, those beautiful warehouses. Gloucester's position as an inland port is really unique in the UK, so that's always proves popular and very Instagrammable. But also, the kind of quirky but edgy streets as well. So our gate streets are historic and beautiful, highly photographic, but also show, a real city working and living, and, people actually in there experiencing the city. Yeah, it's that blend of kind of urban and rural, isn't it, Gloucester? Absolutely. And the county, whether you're in Cheltenham, Gloucester or Stroud, or you can be minutes away from the countryside, that fresh air, open green space, to some edginess in the city, and that gives a nice experience for a break. But also, Gloucester is one of the friendliest cities I've ever encountered. It's difficult to walk down the street without someone pointing out a bit of heritage or history that they're really proud of. So, for a domestic solo traveller, if you're looking for somewhere that's not daunting, that's, that friendly people are going to interact with you, it's perfect. Roger, you're from the Cotswolds. That's where you live currently. What's your perspective on staycations, do you think, for like our biggest brand? It's an internationally known brand, Mr. International, Cotswolds. What's your thoughts on staycation for the Cotswolds?
I was talking to several hoteliers, both in Norton in the Marsh and Stowe in the Wold, for example. And I think Gloucestershire has an enormous opportunity in the short term to develop its brand on the staycation side. There's a lot of interest in the Cotswold. I think the bookings are very heavy in the first few days. But as you said, a lot of people come into the Cotswolds and not necessarily stay for too long down in this part of the region. And that's why I think there's a vast opportunity for you to develop an understanding of what Gloucestershire has to offer. And indeed, it does have a lot to offer. You've mentioned the countryside. There's a lot of history. And I, for one, and my wife, visit Gloucester Quays on a regular basis. Last week we were there, actually. It's grown dramatically in terms of an area for attraction. So I think you've got a short-term window, I think, to develop the Gloucestershire brand, and I think that's the key issue, perhaps, in moving not only locally but internationally.
I guess it's all those elements of Gloucestershire that's really important, and that feeds nicely onto Claire, whose background has been and currently is in food and drink experience, pulling together an area, a group of people. Gloucestershire's working really well at the minute to try and achieve some collaborative workspace for getting itself on the market. Based on your background and experience, Claire, we've got an audience this year that are having to stay at home, not at home literally, but UK. What's your perspective on the staycation market for experiences? So perhaps bringing food and drink into the conversation.
Again, food and drink, it's really a massive pull, massive draw. And even Pete's left the room now, but Pete Allison, when I was at Gloucestershire Business Show, physically in those days, I was amazed because it probably was you, Roger, that brought over a delegation. I think they were Chinese, can't remember. But they actually came up to me at the end and said, actually, all of these people here have experienced the delicious food that we produce here, Gloucester Old Spot pork, double Gloucester cheese. We love all of your produce, and actually now we've tasted it, we want to import it. Who do we speak to? So I think by showcasing the best that we've got in terms of food and drink, we've got huge opportunities. And actually through exporting the food, people then start to understand that Gloucestershire is a place. And we had a interesting meeting, didn't we, Roger, on Zoom, where I was talking to America.
That's right.
And bless her, this Sandra Beer was actually saying, cheese? Oh, we haven't thought about cheese. Well, bless her, she went and had a whole dinner party where she was sampling, or encouraged her friends to sample our wonderful cheeses. So through that experience, it just makes people more inquisitive. You've got more people travelling. We're all welded now to a smartphone, and people are independent travellers, and food and drink is a real driver for that experience.
Yeah, and actually, if you think about all the events that we have on throughout the county in a normal year, a lot of it is food and drink related. The Keys with its markets, Stroud, one of the most famous farmers markets, and all throughout the Cotswolds and the Forest of Dean, there are plenty of opportunities to try our food. And Roger and I talk on a regular basis about getting our food and drink on the map and actually being a real fundamental draw to Gloucestershire. Just bringing Lindsay in, you're a hotelier, but you've got a great network of restaurateurs in Cheltenham. The blend between you as an accommodation provider and offering places for people to go for food and drink experience, what's your relationship been like over the last year, and what's the opportunity going forward for that?
Well, it was really interesting, actually. TEF came together just before the very first lockdown last year, and we've grown and grown in terms of solidarity, because we've just realised, in actual fact, if we all pull together and help each other, that community really works well. So speaking personally, I benefit tremendously from it, because as a bed and breakfast, I suddenly have an ability to say to people, well, there's 45 different venues that I can recommend wholeheartedly. And it's not just a recommendation. It's like, no, actually, I know the owner. I know exactly what you're going to get there. And it's being able to just make sure that your guests have that little special touch, which means so much, because they can go into a restaurant and instead of just having an experience, they're actually having a personalized experience, which from my point of view is wonderful, speaking selfishly.
Do you think having the relationship with those entertainers, those hospitality venues in your patch, do you think that benefits you as an accommodation provider to have that knowledge, that local knowledge? We've got great relationships locally that I think often breed an awareness naturally, because we're very passionate, and therefore by almost working together and knowing each other's businesses, it's easier for us to sell it when a guest says, where can you recommend for me to go and eat? You've clearly now got, and when you come out of your B&B, you can go left into Cheltenham, right into Winchcombe, Broadway. I had Broadway and then thought Winchcombe before, that's where one of my hotels is. So yeah, that blend of both worlds is different from urban and rural again. And I guess that for you, having those relationships with those restaurants is really important for your guests.
Absolutely. I mean, you hit the nail on the head. Never before have I worked anywhere whereby you can say, if you go out, you've got the whole of Cheltenham and so many different varieties. Or in actual fact, you can go right and head into the Cotswolds. I mean, where do you get that ability to do that? It's fantastic. And in actual fact, those within Cheltenham supporting each other are seeing a great lift as well. So it's not just my personal effect with the accommodation. In actual fact, being able to say, well, do you know what, start there for a drink and then come on to me. People really respond at the moment to a restaurateur saying, actually, go and help not help, but have a drink at the bar before you come to us, because that collaboration makes their evening so much better and their experience so much better, or their day or their lunch or whatever. So in every angle, it's just helping tremendously.
Can I just jump in there, Steve? Actually, sorry, we're talking about that collaboration, and I think that is the key to all of this conversation. But having that ability to be able to signpost and hold their hand and guide them around, and we've got we've got Forest of Dean, Wye Valley on our doorstep, and having Visit Gloucestershire, who can actually coordinate that and join the dots and create those itineraries. There's enough for everybody. We've got to get over this. Oh, it's competition. Forest of Dean is fighting against Cheltenham, is fighting against Gloucestershire. Gloucester, those days have gone, and I think all of us here sitting today are really passionate about that, because after COVID, never before have we got to work harder and work more closely together. And even to the point that one of the big festivals locally, when I talked to them and said, are you actually putting together packages? So when people book to come to the festival, are you signposting them to Lindsay's Hotel or the Hatton Court? And there wasn't that thought. It just wasn't. They were busy running a day-to-day business. They weren't able to think about joining those dots. So that's why I think there's huge opportunities for us to go forward.
Yes, and I was just going to say, in actual fact, that, to have the one comment from most people staying, I didn't realise there was so much to do, or how am I going to fit it all in, or I can't decide where to go to dinner because there's too many choices. It's fab.
Roger, did you have a comment on that?
Yeah, I just like to come back on the food front. As you know, we've been running international events for the last 12 months, focusing on food and drink from the region. Claire's input's been very valuable. Again, it's an opportunity for international trade in both directions. To attract an understanding that Gloucestershire exists. But coming back to what Claire said, the Chinese delegation that came over tasting the local food, bear in mind the culture is totally different. And therefore to sensitize their palate to the type of food that we have in the region was amazing. And secondly, it's now being supplied into China. Now, there's opportunities, for example, in India and the US to supply. And we had, as we've said, we've had some interesting inquiries now from local farmers, producers and distributors, as well as inquiries from overseas to start looking at the Gloucestershire food scene, which I think is a great opening for the county.
And interestingly, Happily, which my day job is all about provenance and being able to have honest and transparent information about the food that you're eating. Interestingly, the Chinese are quite into knowing where their food comes from now, Roger. I can't imagine why. But, so actually coming to us and being able to name the farm is a really big driver for them. So let's capitalise on that.
But just building quickly on that, yes, you would be surprised. The reason, they don't trust their food, and therefore what they're buying from overseas, they want to have the history, they want to have the provenance, etc. So again, it's a great opportunity for the county. Come on.
I think what's testament here is that we've all got to be ambassadors of this kind of Gloucestershire county-wide thought process, whether we're a accommodation provider, a destination, where we know everything about our county and we're all really passionate about it. And therefore, the UK staycation market's a challenge for us this year, growing those length of stays and getting higher spends, which leads very nicely onto, we've got to take it to the world at some point. And actually, historically, we've worked with Visit England, Visit Britain. They do an awful lot of work for international trade. We've got our key kind of brands that are already very well known. So again, going around the panel, probably start with you, Roger, first this time. We've got to take Gloucestershire internationally at some point again and reopen ourselves to the opportunities in different markets. What's your thoughts on a global perspective on getting Gloucestershire out there and building itineraries, I guess, and selling those abroad?
Well, I think the first question is Gloucestershire. People overseas don't know Gloucestershire. They know the Cotswolds. They know that very well because there's a brand coming out of the Cotswolds. And I think the first requirement, and I know there's a lot of work going on, is to work and get the brand into the marketplace. Visit England doesn't represent Gloucestershire at all in its itinerary for people coming to the UK. When I talk to people in China and India and we have these Zoom meetings we've had for the last 18 months, we're in Gloucestershire. Oh, where is Gloucestershire? We've really got to start selling the opportunity. The market is there. You've not only got the market for visitors coming, you've also got the market for students coming as well. You've got to start understanding the culture that they bring with them as well. And therefore, I guess the route map to and the signposting to bring international visitors into the county is really get a brand sorted out, tell them what it's all about, and get it out into the market.
Because of the diverse offering that we've all been talking about for the staycation market, in terms of getting that message across, and we've mentioned the Cotswolds, absolutely Cotswolds brand internationally well known. For somebody like Rebecca, got Gloucester, that's your primary focus in your work. Where does Cotswolds kind of fit in with making Gloucester a success within a kind of international market for you?
Well, the Cotswolds is a very different offer from Gloucester, so I don't always kind of position myself to the same audiences that the Cotswolds go after. So when I'm looking at international audiences, first of all, I always look at the data and see who's already coming. And Gloucester has, really good relationships with the US. And I think it's something like 9 million people can trace their ancestry back to, 9 million people in the US can trace their ancestry back to Gloucestershire. So we do a lot of work on ancestry because we have the fantastic Gloucestershire archives based in the city. We also have the international pull of Gloucester Cathedral, which has featured heavily in film tourism. So that's really benefited us, and sort of the Harry Potter films and the Harry Potter fans that come to the city because of the cathedral is a fantastic opportunity. And then we do just have a really good kind of range of cultural offerings. We have Gloucester Rugby, which is a big attractor into the city for people looking for live spectator sport. That's a great way of attracting international audiences to come and witness their first rugby match, because there's nothing quite like it. The roar from the shed is just phenomenal. So there's so many different aspects that we kind of play on to attract international audiences. But I think that our kind of key thing is that we just play to our strengths. We know what we're good at as a city. We know that we're a great base for people exploring the county. So we make it as easy as possible for people visiting the city to explore, Cheltenham, explore the Cotswolds from our city as a base.
Yeah, I know that like 80% of Germans still go to the high street and book with an agent. How do we get Gloucestershire and Gloucester to the high street in Germany? We've kind of got this focus on digital at the moment, but actually when we think about America and how they book, and then when we look at other audiences, how do we actually get ourselves on the map their end? Is it still the traditional brochure, maybe, Claire?
Well,
where's the booking process?
Yeah, it's quite interesting because obviously when I was working on the South West Regional Growth Fund, I was able to go to Utrecht, to Berlin, to different countries, and you can't just lump Europe together and think that Europe all book in the same way. So the German market, for example, they want all their hotel rooms to be exactly the same. They want the same flooring, they want the same curtains. So for Cornwall, that was a massive challenge because all the tour operators that wanted to ship people into Cornwall, they hadn't got the hotels to accommodate them. I even went to a meeting in London where Visit Cornwall was actually suggesting they bought an old cruise liner and moored it up in the docks in Falmouth so that every one of those Germans had the same room, and they wanted hard floors and the curtains weren't to touch the floor. They were unique. The Dutch had much more synergy with the Cornish because the Dutch, they love the English, they can speak our language, they don't mind the rain, and the hills are a novelty. So again, Cotswolds, gosh, the Dutch would love the Cotswolds because they can put up with the rain and they like the idea of hills, and fantastic. And again, with the Dutch, when I was talking to them in Utrecht, the lot of that was the silver pound. So they'd got their camper vans, they'd made their money. And actually, when I was on the stands, it was all about putting those itineraries together, which was easy. You could lead them all along the south coast, stop over in the Scillies for a night, poddle up on the north, stop off Bath, Bristol. And then I was naughty, I'm a Chaltonian girl, how could I help myself? I do apologise. But I'd say, actually, if you position yourself in sort of this Cheltenham area, you can pop and do your day trips and get to see that whole bigger picture, but you're close to the A40. So when it comes to going back to London and getting back home, it was just a really easy stop off. So I think one of the legacies from the South West Regional Growth Fund was having that international opportunity in terms of a website so that they had the itineraries on. And I think we can do a lot more on the itinerary front so that we can actually help them and drive that money around. So we're not competing, we're actually complementing, because it's a completely different offer. You know, people who visit the Forest of Dean love it for the outdoors and Puzzlewood and all the rest of it. And then they'll come to Cheltenham for the Regency, they'll come to Gloucester for the Cathedral, racing and rugby. You know, what more could you wish for? But it's about complementing, it's not competing.
I think I would build on that internationally. It needs to be a cohesive event. It's not Gloucester City, it's not Cheltenham. It has to be Gloucestershire and all the region that is around Gloucestershire. And from that point of view, understanding the culture, for example, the Americans are one of the largest groups coming into the UK. The Chinese are growing. When they can come back, who knows, probably next year. But we need to get it into a position where we are advertising ourselves and branding ourselves within those countries, and understanding what the cultural differences are. As you've said, a lot of the cultures are looking for a clear understanding from where they come from and what they're going to learn when they come to the country.
But interestingly as well, taking that the next step, together we can afford to have a presence internationally to promote ourselves. And heaven forbid, but Devon and Cornwall DMOs hated each other. You know, as far as Malcolm Bell Visit Cornwall was concerned, Devon was something you drove through to get to Cornwall. They finally agreed, and they actually had a stand together. Why not? They couldn't afford to do it on their own, but together they could. So I think with Visit Gloucestershire, you know, being that umbrella, you've got Visit Gloucester, you've got Visit Cheltenham, you've got the Cotswolds. Collaboratively, Visit Gloucestershire can do a whole lot to combine that voice, if you like, so we can shout a bit louder.
So I just think that you're absolutely right. We absolutely should combine and look at, you know, growing our market share. I also think there might be a bit of work that we could do to look at, you know, the rise of Gen Z and millennials as, you know, booking, because they will have very different booking patterns, very different wants and needs than your kind of traditional German person who, you know, would come on a coach trip. And for me, that's the growth area. So if we can kind of tap into them, and obviously I would say that because they fit with my brand very, very well, but they will be the kind of, if we learn how to market to them now, we'll be far better equipped to market to Gen Alpha. And, you know, so I think there's some work to be done on perception around that as well. And it is very much about finding out about the hidden gems, and it's about those experiences. And when I listened to one of the talks that I heard when I was abroad, I think it was Milan and Barcelona, and they stood up and they said, in the old days, we'd just invite a load of journalists across, put them on a bus, take them round to the sites and shove them back again. They said, now what we do, we have a flat in Barcelona, we have a flat in Milan. We actually invite the bloggers, not the blaggers, but the bloggers, and they will target specific markets. So Mumsnet, so they'll have a feature leading up to the holidays where they'll invite these bloggers to come and stay, but it's the local people that take them out. So the locals take them to the hidden gems and eat the local food. And that's how we've got to be thinking, because if we don't adjust to this new way of experiencing the best that we've got, then we're going to miss out.
I was just going to say, I think what's fascinating is that so a lot of my guests are walking the Cotswold Way. I'm on the Cotswold Way, so they stop with me for a night. And in actual fact, the Cotswold Way does everything that we're talking about, because before COVID, you know, somebody would maybe take a cruise over for a week for a relaxation, then they'd walk through the Cotswolds, through all the different cities, all the different parts of Gloucestershire, and they're kind of creating their own itinerary, but they're seeing all parts of Gloucestershire and it's already there for them. So the concept of itinerary works because it's already working, because the Cotswold Way is the perfect example of starting in the middle of nowhere, so to speak, ending up in Bath. But I think what would be amazing is if, I appreciate there's going to be some adamant walkers that want to do it in 7 days and that's it. But if in actual fact you could get people to understand that if they did 2 nights everywhere, on that second day they could go and explore where they were staying, rather than doing a straight 7 days, get to Bath and then they head off to London. It's like, actually, no, hang on a minute. Extend what you're doing with the Cotswold Way and you've automatically got your own itinerary, and it's green as well because everyone's walking, and it helps the local economies. And it's that local thing. They're staying in bed and breakfast because they want to know what it's like. You know, who are you and where do you come from is the number one question I get asked sometimes. So yeah, I think the Cotswold Way is a really good example of where it works. It just works.
Yeah, that definite draw for I already know what I'm going to do when I'm there is something that we've got to work on. We've got that, as you say, like the Cotswold Way, when the itinerary exists and you know you're going on holiday. Most of the time we wouldn't go abroad unless we've booked somewhere and we know what we're going to do when we're there. And it's the same applies, particularly if you're coming over to Gloucestershire or into the UK. You're going to come into Heathrow and turn left, and you don't really know what's about to hit you until you're there if you've never been before. And also we need the options and the partnerships wider than the county. I was just thinking as you were talking, and you were talking about getting to Gloucestershire, and actually if I arrive into Heathrow from China or America, I haven't necessarily even got a car. So I've then got to get to Gloucestershire, and we're very rural. 80% of Gloucestershire is green, isn't it? So how do visitors then get around? Roger, have you got a kind of perspective on that?
If you look at the Chinese attitude to holidaying, again, you've got to look at the demographic in terms of age. There are various groups. The older group tend to come on coach tours, and therefore they are going to be shipped around the country, and it's again getting the tour operators to bring them into Gloucestershire and stop. I mean, at the moment they come into the Cotswold, go and have a cup of coffee, look around the statues, and off they've gone. There isn't the understanding, I think, from the tour operators of the benefit there is in the region. If you come to the younger generation, you're looking at people who are coming probably in a group of 2 or 3 because they can speak English, whereas the older generation, their English is relatively limited. So again, it's a different approach. The younger generation are looking for the activities. They are looking for what is available to do in the county. And quite often, if you can attract them, they will stay. India, slightly different. We had some Indian friends come across. They were going to do Cornwall, Devon, up through Gloucestershire, Cotswolds and back to London. That was their approach. When I explained to them what was in Gloucestershire, they spent 3 days actually in Gloucestershire rather than the driving through. So again, it's a question of getting the information out. And I think the image that we're going to create, we've got 12 months, I guess, to create that image with the staycation situation at the moment. And if we can do that, then there's a great opportunity for the international side.
We've jumped forward, they tell us, in terms of digital, and actually, hopefully, we've got an easier way, an easier route to market in the sense of the kind of digital world that we're now living in to perhaps get what we're talking about across. Rebecca's even just mentioned the alpha generation. We're still kind of working on how we get Y and Z to Gloucestershire. But, realistically, we've got to get this inspiration to an international crowd, maybe even youngsters. Rebecca, have you got a perspective from a digital? How do we actually kind of get those immersive experiences? People really want to maybe try it before they buy it?
Absolutely. So, we are talking to digital natives now, and the panel here aren't digital natives. Sorry for saying that to everybody, but just so you know. So the way that we do this is that we engage with school student bodies, we engage with youth creative networks to try and understand how they kind of purchase things, what's the kind of consumer behavior, what brands appeal to them, so we can kind of align ourselves and align our messages so that they work for them. But also, the rise of virtual fam trips. I brilliantly had an inquiry the other day for a travel company who's looking to put on a virtual horse riding lesson, and fantastic, because Gloucestershire has lots of those kind of experiences that we can promote to people, again, internationally. And then also, we have, as you mentioned earlier, the opportunity to work with influencers. And, there's never been an easier time to market to people using kind of real experiences, because that's the kind of last bastion of trustworthy marketing and advertising now, to see someone else's experience of a place. And it's just so powerful, and it's just so exciting. It's the kind of bit of my job that I absolutely adore. I love the time that you can spend showing someone your city, and showing them the little hidden gems, the kind of back streets, the shops that you wouldn't necessarily go into, which stops people going to the same things over and over and over again, which again, for me, is just really exciting.
Just one point on that situation of digitalization and information. I was looking on YouTube, and there is an article on Bath, only 2 or 3 minute video on the Roman baths. It is focused on Guangzhou and on Shanghai in China. It's very, very good. And it's that sort of thing. I don't think it requires a lot of energy other than a strategy as to how you're going to get the message across. And I think if we could develop that strategy, then you have an audience that would be prepared to pick it up. And just one other thing we talk about international trade. I think you need to also think, where are we going to focus? Where is the best focus? In other words, when we put the money on the table, what return do we get? Where is the focus we want to do internationally?
Absolutely. And Roger, we did a big piece of visitation data work looking at who was still visiting during 2020, because they will provide our quick win audiences going forward. You know, they're the kind of low hanging fruit, which as a kind of small destination with not huge budgets, we need to have that insight to understand who to go after, who's going to be, you know, most bullish back into market, who can we, you know, start engaging with now, ready for 2022.
One thing that I was just going to mention in terms of the digital side of things, having done a seminar with Visit England, the number of people that came back to me afterwards, sorry, it was on being visible as a business, as an accommodation business, the number of people that came back to me afterwards asking for help was amazing. I didn't realise that in actual fact it feels so overwhelming to so many about being visible, whether that's Instagram or booking.com or whoever. It's just about being out there as a small business. And I think part of the charm of Gloucestershire is we've got some lovely bed and breakfasts, some really small independents that are fantastic and lovely owners and people that people would like to meet. But if they can't even become visible because it makes them nervous, or because maybe technology has jumped forward so quickly and they've not kept up with it, how on earth do we get them out into the international market? So from that point of view, I think there's also, apart from just jumping in and going for it, as we're talking about, I think there's also education. And I think that education needs to be reflected, whether it's, you know, business to business helping each other collaboratively, or whether it's actually just doing lots of local things to try and encourage everyone to become more visible. I think there's an educational side to this as well.
Yeah, I was just thinking that actually, because education is one of my questions, but perhaps a bit further on. But what we've really noticed through the pandemic is when businesses have been closed, there's been grants available to DMOs and to individuals to really advance on that knowledge around social media. And I was in a kind of hosting a talk about social media a few weeks ago, and it's a strange world to be in when you've been on social media for so many years as a hotelier and with lots of properties. We've relied on social media for 7-8 years at least, if not slightly longer. And we now seem to be jumping ahead where people still need training, but they probably use it in their personal life, but they just don't realise the jump between personal and business. So from an education, do you think the education sector plays its part in helping our sector recover? And I suppose collaboratively, education and skills has been a hot topic, a lack of skills in the sector. Lindsay's just pointed out B&Bers that really want to get online. Claire, thoughts on education?
Again, I'm going to jump in. Having worked with Visit Cornwall had a period of time where through the floods, every time you turned on the news, it's all about Cornwall's closed, the floods. The poor hospitality industry was terrified because they needed that visitor economy money to come flooding into the county. So Visit Cornwall as a DMO, as Visit Gloucestershire can do collectively, actually went to the private sector because it didn't actually have to cost them anything to do this. There's so many people in the private sector that actually they want the publicity, get their name out and to be seen to be doing good for the county. They were really happy to host some virtual lessons on social media. It's about giving those people the fishing rod, and not the fish. So if we can upskill them and enable them to do that for themselves with the help and guidance of an umbrella organisation such as Visit Gloucestershire, that's amazing. And so many of these little towns that they don't, not everybody's got the likes of you, not everybody's got a bid. They're floundering. I did a lot of work with Winchcombe, and they didn't know how to put themselves on a map. And by creating a really strong website and having the lessons to teach them how to use the social media, so they were completely tying it all together, because it's not just about sending out tweets, it's putting the whole package together. Massive difference. They were getting hits from all over the world, and again, it was interesting, all the people, wherever there's a hole, there's a Cornish miner, for example. So the fact that there's a word for it, isn't it? Diaspora, is it? Oh, it's a big posh word, but I can't even spell it. Marzipan. All these marzipan individuals that have got connections with the places from where they came from was massive. So yeah, I'm not good on it. Don't challenge me in Scrabble, useless. Diaspora, I'm sure it's diaspora. I'm going to have to look it up now.
Diaspora.
Is it? Oh, yeah. Thank goodness, you saved me. So I think it's really interesting. It's a whole new way of doing things, but I've completely lost my train of thought, so I'm shut up now.
Rebecca wants to say something.
I want to jump in as well.
Jump in.
Just because it's a real passion of mine is the tourism industry. I mean, we work in the best industry in the world. It feels like a family, it's a really wonderful, supportive environment, and yet it isn't really, and it's a massive growth industry, yet it isn't really presented to young people as a career option. It's often kind of played down as kind of a low income jobs, but actually you may start off on a low income job, and I absolutely did. But then there is the opportunity to work your way up, and so many hotels have those people that started out on reception and now are a sales manager, and actually presenting that. And also, I think there's something that we can do by going out and talking to universities, going out and talking to schools, flying the flag for our industry, because like I say, it is the best industry in the world and the biggest.
And I'm wholeheartedly with you on your soapbox there, but yes, it's a massive passion of mine. I mean, I've never done anything else. It is my career, but we've sort of all been talking behind the scenes about recruitment at the moment and how we're so short. And whilst we've got this phenomenal opportunity for staycation, somebody who's quite service orientated the other day sent an email out in their newsletter and said, could this actually be the worst year for hospitality? Because if we're not prepared, if we don't have the recruitment, if we don't have the people there, it's going to look like we actually can't do what we need to do. And let's pray that isn't. But I see their understanding. I understand why they would say that. But I wholeheartedly back up what you're saying about the education side of things, because we need to get people understanding from 16 that it is a career opportunity, and we need to bring this sort of vocation and everything from the very beginning, so that we don't suddenly open up after a pandemic and Brexit and go, oh, we have no team members. In actual fact, we've been queuing them up for years because it's seen as a go-to. Yes, I'm with you on this one.
I know naturally becoming a sales director started off working on a bar, and you can have a career. I also appreciate for some of my colleagues who, back when I was more junior, stepping up to senior, I thought everybody wanted a career. But actually, you can come into the sector and be comfortable. For those that don't necessarily want to be the boss, they can have a really good job. And I think what the sector owes itself to as part of a Build Back Better programme is 0-hour contracts and minimum wage are not helping us. That is what stops people wanting to come and work in our industry. The last thing anybody needs right now is low pay, given the circumstances that we're in. And I know that looking at the 267 jobs that have become available since Monday in the county alone, and that was just on Indeed, that you just see minimum wage, and you look at hours and you don't know what the hours are going to be. People want certainty. We were supposed to be building back better as part of recovery, and already we're not helping ourselves because our marketing to our young people is actually, it's a bit of a dead end situation. I don't know how many hours I'm going to get in a week, and my income's not going to be great, so I'm not going to be able to think about mortgage, buying a property, having a family. So I think we've got a real responsibility as a sector. We've drifted slightly away from international marketing, if you like, from that perspective. But these are all grassroots.
I can come back to education a little bit.
Yeah.
Again, one of the opportunities surely is to encourage the youngsters to come in from overseas as students. And again, what are we doing in Gloucestershire to try and encourage that situation from a university point of view? Because when I look at the universities that people tend to look at and come from overseas, unfortunately, Gloucestershire doesn't appear on the list. Warwick does, Bristol does. And again, it's a large population when you get them into the campus. They bring with them the culture, they bring with them knowledge, and they take back an understanding of what is around the county. We were at Warwick University last week and talking to people on the campus, and most of them, I have to say to you, were Chinese. And again, we were talking about international trade and food because of our international food activity. And they have a big Chinese restaurant there. And we've invited some of them down into the Cotswolds to sample the Cotswold food. Why not Gloucestershire? Didn't think of that at the time, but there we are. But again, what are we doing to try and encourage the students to come into the Gloucestershire region?
Brilliant, Roger, because you're absolutely right. And when I first moved back up here from Cornwall, I was trying my damnedest to say to them, please, you learn from what Visit Cornwall's doing. We need a Visit Gloucestershire, because actually this isn't just about tourism. This is about making Gloucestershire a wonderful place to work, rest and play. Our universities need to encourage international students. We need to encourage inward investment. And as I found talking to some of the chief execs' wives and chief execs in Cornwall, when I said, why did you choose to move your business from abroad into Cornwall? Oh, well, the missus said that the schools are great and there's great universities, and actually there's lots to do and nice walks and lovely cities. There's a care home. Yeah, your care homes are nice in Cornwall. Lifestyle. So actually we think it's just about tourism, but actually we also need to keep the youngsters here. We have a huge amount of children, I can't say children, can I? I've got children, but teenagers, talent leaving the county. So if we can manage brand Gloucestershire, see, we've gone full circle. If we can manage brand Gloucestershire, we can touch all of that and make it that wonderful place to work, rest and play. It's not just about tourism. So that's kind of something that I'm passionate about.
And actually, picking up on what you've both said, just having the students over in the county for several years in their education brings visitors,
yes,
friends and family who want to visit them. So not only are we taking our culture that they've become accustomed to back, and hopefully they're bringing in visitors as all part of this bigger picture. Education does play a huge part. We have got some great education settings for the international market. We have education partners who have huge amounts of international students, Cheltenham Ladies College, for example, and others in the county. I suppose it's just growing that, which will help us on our recovery. I haven't mentioned the B word, but it's in my notes. We've talked about COVID, recovery. Whilst all that's been going on, we've obviously had Brexit, and whether or not that presents recruitment problems. I was thinking about when you were talking, we're struggling to find people, and last year when you had the kind of salary brackets dictated as to who can come in from abroad on what salary, you're not going to pick up a 25k salary as a cleaner in a hotel. That in itself presents an issue to recruit. We are struggling for chefs once more, and all the levels of recruitment. So I would imagine a blend of Brexit and COVID won't help us, but I just wanted to get a perspective from the panel on Brexit in your world, and perhaps has it been smoke screened by COVID, and is there more to come? Rebecca, as a destination, Brexit.
It's really difficult, isn't it? Gloucester, because it's not always front of mind for international visitors, I don't know if we'll feel the effects of it, or we won't understand the effects of it anytime soon. I imagine that maybe in 2025 we might look back and go, okay, so that market kind of disappeared. I know I used to work in Bath, and I know that when the referendum result was announced, there were 2 European markets that absolutely plummeted and did not recover, despite all of our efforts. So for us, it's a case of, really looking at the data very carefully to see the impact, but also, there is a message out there that needs to be put out by ourselves, by Visit Gloucestershire, by Visit Britain, that we still love you. That actually it's not everybody in the UK. It's definitely not the tourism sector in the UK. And I've got to be careful because I might end up being a little bit political. But we still want our visitors, we still want our international visitors. They are so important for spend, for overnight stays, for our economy. And also they bring, a really amazing atmosphere, a real buzz to a city when they visit.
And actually picking up on your Bath comment there, we have to work collectively as destinations. It's not just about Gloucestershire success. People go to Stonehenge and they come into Gloucestershire and back the other way. So what fails for Bath because of Brexit becomes a problem for us as well. So the bigger picture here is really important. Roger, have you got a thought on Brexit?
Yeah, I think there's two things affect the county under Brexit. One is the companies that were exporting to Europe now have to export to a number of different countries, and they're finding that very difficult. So there is quite a fallout on companies stopping trading with Europe or with the various countries in Europe, and they're in the mode of survival, and therefore the amount of funds they have for social activity and for travel obviously is going to affect the situation in terms of visiting Cornwall or wherever. The other side of the equation is that Brexit undoubtedly is going to create a problem. We haven't seen half of it yet.
Big statement there, Roger. We haven't seen half of it yet. But actually, I'm sat here with Lindsay, accommodation providers. We have had international guests in the past. We did notice when Brexit, the referendum was announced, that we had tours cancelling in larger properties. And we've obviously then suffered because individual travellers have decided not to come. And this was all kind of pre-COVID, which again is why I mentioned that kind of smoke screen. Have you noticed any effects, Lindsay, within your network for Brexit?
Well, I was just going to say, in actual fact, the number of people that mentioned it pre-COVID, but that sort of, I think there was a slight assumption that because you were English or from the UK, therefore you must have voted for it. So there was a sort of, we almost wanted a T-shirt saying, "No, I didn't." But
be careful.
Yes, well, but it was just, it was amazing that everybody was, the Europeans were slightly hesitant almost about coming because of the fact that they felt, what was the UK saying? So that's one side of it. In terms of a very practical side, yes, I mean within TERF we have very openly been discussing the fact that we have a lot of European, not only a lot of European owners, but European style restaurants, whether it's French or Spanish, but an absolute nightmare trying to get team members now. I mean, a French restaurant cannot have French team members because the French team members are on a lower salary to obviously the rules and all the rest of it, and so it just doesn't work. And it's not because of any other reason than the fact they want it to feel authentic. They're used to cooking in French, they're used to talking in French, and it's they just would like to have French people in a French restaurant, and it doesn't seem that strange, but now it's nigh on impossible. And it's moments like that where you feel I think hospitality is going to suffer in many ways, and I have to admit, I agree with Roger. I don't think we've even seen the start of it in terms of the impact on hospitality, and I don't mean that in a scary way. I just mean I think until COVID has sort of got to a certain point, we're all sort of scrambling in a different way.
Yeah, I remember actual colleagues of mine, we are a big family. When you work in hotels and they live in and they work in, you become a real family. It's like living on a cruise ship, but unfortunately you're on a hill in the middle of nowhere. And the referendum came out, and I remember all of our housekeepers and our bar staff who all represent the Europe basically, and they were really scared and frightened. And then you kind of look at come and work for us, and actually people don't want to work in the sector, and you kind of think, well, it's all part and parcel of really struggling to recruit right now. So I think restaurants who are French, who want French staff, that does make total sense. There's nothing nicer than going to a French restaurant and somebody serving you that's French. But that may not be a possibility, and perhaps that's the bigger picture of Brexit. So just to round off, really.
Just one, sorry to interrupt you. There, of course, is another area of attraction that we really should consider in any strategy. We spoke about education, but what about attracting companies to invest in the region? There are a lot of countries, India particularly, and China, who are looking, and in fact America, I had a discussion last night, are looking to invest in the UK. how do we attract and what are we doing? What is our strategy for attracting these countries into the area? You attract them in, you bring the families, you bring people, you bring employment, you bring wealth, all of the things that are an element of dependency for the hospitality sector. And yet, just to give you an idea of the history I have, we tried to get Gloucestershire involved in an Indian delegation coming in. No interest at all. And they were truly looking at investment. Now, India is I think it's the fourth largest investor in the country into bringing business into the country. And yet, we don't seem to be encouraging it to the level that maybe we could encourage it and therefore bring extra employment, extra value, extra income, extra wealth, and extra opportunity. Just a point.
No, both destination, we've had the conversation about inward investment, and it is all part of the picture. Visitor economy isn't excluded from, we need more hotels, we need more restaurateurs, we want better experiences. There's the discussion this morning about high streets and town centres. Never before have I sat here and realised as a hotelier how important town centres are for our success. We're reopening, and I think our town centres, where they were struggling pre-COVID, they've been struggling since the 90s, let's face it. And I think it's because there's a change in times. They are hubs for entertainment and dining experience. When we did our survey for Visit Gloucestershire back earlier on in the year, and we surveyed people about experiences that they wanted, so many youngsters wanted to come and go to a museum and then go to a dining opportunity in town and blend the experience with learning. We're away on holiday, we want education, we want to go to a museum, and we want somewhere great to go and eat. And actually, when you kind of go full circle, we want more of it. And I think our high streets are very empty, and there is plenty of space for investment right now. And actually that kind of dining and entertainment is also where the gap can be plugged. So to kind of round off, sustainability has been collaboration and sustainability have been at the heart of every conversation for the last year. How do we build back sustainably? We've ironed out today, I think in many ways, we've still got a lot of work to do. There's a lot of recovery period over the next couple of years that I think we've all agreed. Certainly 21 and 22 have been mentioned. So I think we've certainly worked on a sustainable outlook for Gloucestershire. So I just wanted some final thoughts on visitor economy and international opportunities. Maybe one quick fire, something we haven't discussed about.
Oh, no.
What have we left out? Anything?
I think I'm just going to touch on the fact that on the collaboration issue that you mentioned, Steve, because there are so many. There's lots and lots of tourist boards, DMOs, whatever you want to call them, and then we all do a very similar job. And there is this opportunity to kind of remove a level of duplication by working together. And that would give us strength in things like procurement. We often use similar web platforms. We often use, kind of similar PR agencies, that kind of thing. So actually there is some kind of buying power there. And that actually we are kind of stronger together, even though we all have our own role as well.
Thanks, Claire.
I think it's really important that we as a county are proud of where we live. I think that sense of place is really important. And I know we talked about the skills that we're lacking in. There's nothing better than going to a hotel where local people are serving you. That's why I love a brilliant B&B like yours, Lindsay, because I want that authentic, real experience. So when I'm eating that food and that person is serving it, they're proud that they're serving local produce, and they can tell you where it came from, and they'll share stories of places to go and visit. So I think home growing our own talent and keeping them here is really important, and I don't think we realise that. And I think the whole thing about Visit Gloucestershire being that umbrella to tackle such subjects is really important for everybody.
Roger?
Yeah, I would agree with both of you. I think the first thing is collaboration. Remove the bureaucracy and get together and work it out what we're going to do as a strategy. Gloucester is great. There's a lot to see here. Let's have a simple strategy that moves us forward on the visitor economy, but also focuses on where do we want to focus on the international side. You can't conquer the world, but you can conquer certain territories.
And there's plenty of experience there, Roger, with different markets.
There, yes.
Yes, definitely pitched there. Definitely some individual experience within the county that we can lean on and target those relevant markets and kind of take it from a first base before we get to second base. Lindsay, your final perspective?
Well, I was just going to say, I think it's all positive. I think if COVID has taught us anything, it's let's go for it, because what's the worst that could happen? I think the worst has probably happened already. So from that point of view, let's go for it. I think everybody's so positive at the moment to see some change happen and to see something positive happen. If it's today, from the different discussions that have been had, or everything that Visit Gloucestershire's doing, there's loads of ideas and there's loads of people that are really proud and do want to collaborate and move things forward. So let's go for it. Let's just run with everything. And if it works, it works. And if it doesn't, it doesn't. And we learn for it. But let's go for it.
Great, thanks. Well, thank you to my panel today, who have been talking about international opportunities for Gloucestershire. I really hope you've enjoyed the session, and I hope that we've inspired you. If you are a business owner and you feel slightly isolated and think that you're on your own, you're not. You've heard from the panel that we've all got lots of issues, lots of opportunities. We're really optimistic. The sector has reopened this week, and I think we've got everything to play for. So thank you very much for joining us, and we'll see you again soon.